That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Concrete Cowboy, the directorial debut of Ricky Staub, which Netflix is premiering April 2nd, 2021. It initially premiered at the 2020 Toronto International Film Festival, which is where I saw it originally. So this was a rewatch for me.
This is also our second attempt at recording this video. Mm-hmm. We tried yesterday and something terrible happened.
Something wicked this way came.
So hopefully this works. Anyway.
It's based on I believe it's a 2009 YA novel by Greg Neri, which I think, I didn't know that before, which kind of makes sense about the tone of the film.
The basic story is, it's set in modern time. It revolves around a young man named Cole, who's played by
McLaughlin.
And I know him from Stranger Things.
That's correct.
We find him in Detroit. He lives with his mother. Cole has been expelled from school. His mom is upset. She tells his ass to get in the car. And they drive to North Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And she drops him off with his dad, neither of whom know what's going on.
Right.
His dad is named Harp, and Harp is played by Idris Elba. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about Harp is a black cowboy. Mm-hmm. He's part of a community with a century-long history.
The Fletcher Street Stables, which is a real place.
Yes. So there's tension between the two initially because they're estranged. Also because on Cole's first day with his dad, he's out and about and runs into a childhood friend named Smush. And Smush used to be a member of the community with Harp. Like, Harp was his mentor. And then there was like a falling out. Mm-hmm.
And there's a horse living in Harp's place.
So there are horses. So the community they live in is like inner city. It's not nice. The conditions under which the horses are kept are subpar. And Harp's horse, whose name is Chuck,
which used to be Smush's.
Yeah. Resides primarily in Harp's apartment, mm-hmm. which to me plays out more comedic than anything. But Cole spends like the day and night with Smush, and when Smush brings Cole back to his dad's house, Harp is waiting outside with Cole's things in trash bags, throwing them at him, saying that if you're going to be running around with Smush, you can't live in my house. Mm-hmm. They resolve that tension primarily through Cole working with the horses, like cleaning up after them, feeding them, riding them, all that. They have another falling out.
And it's also important to note the establishment of Cole's bonding with kind of a new horse they've acquired named Boo, who's won't let anyone else near it except for Cole.
It's also important to know that there is a cop played by Method Man. Mm-hmm.
Named
Leroy, who used to be a part of the community, but then sort of transitioned into law enforcement, but still walks that line of wanting to support his peoples, but then also trying to usher them into the 21st century, because in the background of this story is the gentrification of the neighborhood they live in. Okay, so Cole and his dad have another falling out. Then one of the horses escapes, that newer horse, Boo, who Cole had
Boo Radley.
That threw me off. So
Sorry.
The horse escapes and is like running around the park, and this group of people sort of surround the horse in an attempt to tame it. And of course, Cole is the one who's able to subdue this horse. Uh-huh. And that's what sort of changes Harp's impression of his son. From there, we see, so Smush ends up getting killed.
Yes.
And the health department or whoever would be involved in like animal control or whatever, they come in because these animals are not being kept in.
Yeah, it's a kind of a tense stand-up because they're told they've received reports about animals being starved and being kept in poor conditions. So there's a stand-up between the community and law enforcement as the horses are taken away and put in a police municipal stable.
So the final sort of scene of the film is Cole and his dad Harp go in an attempt to release their horses, but then Method Man is there saying like, if you just release your horse, they're going to know who did it, so you just have to release all of the horses.
But the intention was to go get Chuck for one last ride to visit Smush's grave.
So they release the horses. The end. We assume that Cole and his dad will continue fortifying their relationship.
And then as the end credits hit is when we realize that several of the cast members are actually members of the Fletcher Street stables that were playing themselves in the film, and there's brief snippets of kind of them talking about their experiences as the end credits roll.
So interesting story. My dad became friends with someone from this community back in the mid 90s. It was probably like 92. And he decided that he was also a black cowboy. So there was like a year period where my dad was spending a lot of money on cowboy boots, belts, buckles, like expensive leather hats with rattlesnake heads attached to them. Thankfully that
Spurs.
Thankfully that wore off because he was definitely posing.
Did he have spurs?
No spurs. I was still driving a BMW, so I don't know. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, first of all, what I like is that the subject matter, anything that's kind of recuperating an erasure, which is of course this history of the black cowboy, which as a very pointed or a very nail on the head exchange with Lorraine Toussaint, who plays one of the members, Nessie, about how Hollywood's depictions have whitewashed that history, which only very recently, as more black filmmakers have rose to prominence, we've seen more examples of that, like Antoine Fuqua's remake of The Magnificent Seven. And I would even point to Annie Silverstein's Bull from 2019 with Rob Morgan and Yolanda Ross, which is a film I liked. So I like that, but I think the strongest part of the film is actually these community members speaking at the end credits. I found myself wanting to know more about them and their specific stories, or kind of almost a different entry point into this narrative, like the relationship between Leroy and Harp, as opposed to what plays to me like a very kind of cliched, estranged father-son relationship that, while is very universal, and I haven't read the novel it's based on, but I imagine that it's true to the text. It just translated on film, and maybe it's because it's from a white director and screenwriter, which I know people don't like when I say that, but maybe it's...
Yeah, we're going to have to delete a whole bunch of comments now, thanks.
Sorry, but, there's just an earnest, because the author is a person of color, and this is a white director and screenwriter, as I said, and there's just an earnestness to it that I think makes it feel corny, maybe even a little cheap. Not that there isn't some emotional nuance, it just feels very rote in a way that maybe want the documentary version.
I agree. I think the most fascinating aspect of the story is the community and the balance between the backdrop of the gentrification and how these people are surviving because they seem to be all lower income and somewhat struggling, because I do believe they would care for their horses better if they had the money. And one character says...
I often go hungry.
Lakeith Stanfield's character, who's...
Well, that's not Lakeith Stanfield.
That's not Lakeith?
No, that man is actually a member of that community.
You told me? Were you being funny?
He looks just like him.
You tricked me. Now you got me on camera looking stupid.
Well, you edit these.
Sorry.
He looks like him, doesn't he?
I'm embarrassed. I think the most fascinating part of the story is these people's community and their motivation to continue even though it's so difficult. So it's unfortunate. And again, the source material I'm not familiar with. So if the book is based on the relationship between this father and son, then it is what it is. It's just unfortunate that the way it plays out is more of like this sort of melodramatic, corny, to me, felt like a movie you'd see on like the History Channel. Sure. Like the quality of it.
Sure. Things I thought of while watching it was recently like Charm City Kings about the racers in Baltimore starring Meek Mill, which I don't know if did you watch that? Which had some positive attributes as well. And maybe it's just because I don't know why YA authors do this, but the like Smush as a character name reminded me of like S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders, like Soda Pop and Pony Boy.
Is that the movie with Tom Cruise and all those
Oh,
people?
that's a huge cast.
I've read that book.
The film version. I have too,
Okay.
but it, very much in that vein as well. I felt very cold towards Idris Elba's Harp as well. Like I never had a moment, even as he starts to bond with him. And one scene in particular that felt so stiff and rigid to me is when McLaughlin is breaking down because his dad has taken the paraplegic member out for a horse ride, and that's kind of a very touching moment. But the son sees this and has not received any warmth like that from his father.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you love me?
Right, he's like, why?
You care more about these strangers than me.
And then, Idris Elba saunters over to the record player and puts on John Coltrane and proceeds to share a well-spoken monologue, but also one that feels like very much like a monologue about how his son came to be named Coltrane. It's just moments like that kind of took me out. And also, I love Lorraine Toussaint. Ever since, I remember, I think I was in middle school when my mother was watching Any Day Now with her and Annie Potts. And ever since there, she's been a very recognizable face.
Orange is the New Black.
Orange is the New Black, a lot of people know her from an excellent... She's the villain, she's V. But, Ava DuVernay has used her several times very effectively in Middle of Nowhere. Just every time she pops up, you're usually getting something, even that she's better than the material that it is. And this, I felt like she did what she could with a lot of the dialogue, but it still felt very stiff. Like she has an exchange with Cole where he's asking to stay in her place after he's been kicked out, and she has some passage about how she always keeps a bed for the prodigal sons. Just nothing really rang authentic about that. And she's the one that talks around while they're drinking about how Hollywood has whitewashed the urban cowboy, if you will.
You had in the last attempt at this video a Yolanda Ross reference. What was that?
Oh, I already said it. Bull.
Oh.
With the Annie Silverstein film.
I didn't want you to forget.
Can't forget Yolanda.
Cannot forget Yolanda. What else do you want to say about this movie?
I don't remember what we said last time, but...
What would you give it?
I would give it 2 out of 5.
Anything else? I'm not rating it because I didn't pay full attention.
No, that's it.
All right, bye.
Bye.